top to bottom. And it got me thinking, what do you miss the most in this time? And what is the first thing you'd do once lockdown finishes? Now, Nadia there, she misses getting in a cleaner now and then. She has the capacity to, have the capacity to have a cleaner. I must admit, the first thing I'm going to do is get a haircut. It's starting to turn into a bit of an afro. Stephen, you first. What do you miss most?
I had a haircut scheduled for the day after the lockdown. So Leonie at Vada and in Auckland there, I'll be coming back to see you as soon as I can. Look, I try not to think about that, to be perfectly frank with you. There are lots of things I miss, but I'm in a pretty comfortable situation. But I would mention one thing. Mm-hmm. Next week is Holy Week, and we would have been every day at St Matthew's in the city, listening to music, walking our labyrinth, doing Palm Sunday, big service on Easter Day. I'm going to really miss that. That's going to be a real difficult week to get through.
Yeah.
What about you, Verity? Here's a couple here. Megan says a trim flat white at my favourite cafe.
She totally read my mind. Absolutely.
Yeah. And Don in Carden says, Wallace, fish and chips.
Oh yes. Oh God.
They're starting to come through now. What you miss the most. Verity, what about you?
I do miss cafes probably the most, not just for the coffee, because I have a coffee machine at home, but not just for the coffee, but because I often go to cafes to escape my own thoughts. Like if I'm having a particularly overwhelming day, I go to a cafe and that distracts me. And now in lockdown, I just sit with this mental symphony of noise in my head. So I miss being able to drown that out via, cafes and people. But I also I just really miss like hanging out with my family, like my parents and my brother. My brother's actually here from overseas and I can't see him because we're in different bubbles. So I never thought I'd miss this, but I just miss all the annoying hugs that my mum used to give me when she'd try and kiss me properly. And, she'd try and, be all mumsy and I would push her away because I'm, too cool for that. But now I'm like, no, Mum, come back. I want a hug.
Just finally, a message on church, Stephen, because it's Friday and people will be coming up to Sunday and there'll be a lot of people who actually look forward every Sunday to that communion, to that community, to that neighbourliness that they have in church. Many people will be really missing that aspect, huh?
That's right, and churches are responding to this in different ways. Certainly at St Matthew's in the city, we've got online video services. We've been doing a Zoom catch-up. Last week we had 45 people from the congregation. That's about half of our normal weekly congregation on Zoom. Can you believe it? So I'm thinking of Blanche here. If she's got a church nearby that she could get in touch with, she might be able to get some companionship there. But we're finding new ways to connect. But next week is going to be particularly difficult because that's, especially for Anglicans and Catholics, that's Holy Week. That's a big time in the church year. And we'll get through it, no doubt about it.
Good on you. And Eliza in Wellington says, we are with you, Blanche. Would you like to Skype? Blanche, stay strong as all of you do the same. It's been wonderful to have you across the week. And Verity, Stephen, thank you very much for being with us. Checkpoint next. I'm Wallace Chapman. Thanks to my producers Mary and Melita and Caitlin, and I'm with you Monday 3:45. See you then. Have a great weekend.
Whakarongo mai koe ki te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. E haere ake nei, the Health Minister is forced to apologise for driving 2 kilometres to do a mountain bike during lockdown, even though we've all been told numerous times to stay local. The COVID-19 outbreak disrupts justice in a way not even seen during world wars. Today's numbers, 71 new or probable cases, bringing the total cases of COVID-19 to 868. We're seeing a lot of politicians at the moment, but where are the rest of them? We do a welfare and productivity check. The SOS Cafe, where you can pre-purchase treats like coffees and massages in lockdown to have once you're free and keep businesses afloat.
RNZ News at 5. No mai, haere mai. Good afternoon, I'm Paul Brennan. The government is giving businesses extra help to weather the COVID-19 storm and keep people in jobs. Temporary changes to the Companies Act will be made as soon as possible in the hopes it will stop businesses from becoming insolvent. Here's political reporter Charlie Drever.
The Finance Minister, Grant Robertson, says changes include giving company directors a safe harbour from insolvency duties. He says the threat of a director being held personally liable for a company's money problems is likely to make them inclined to advise closing down a business. The law change also enables businesses affected by COVID-19 to place existing debts into hibernation until they are able to start trading normally again. From Parliament, ko Charlie Drever, DNA.
8 New Zealanders who have been stranded in South America will be arriving home about now. They were due to land in Auckland at 5 tonight after departing from Uruguay. Many of the passengers have been on a cruise chartered by Chimu Adventures, which had been meant to disembark in Argentina on March 21st. The flight home was chartered by Chimu Adventures, and the co-founder of the company, Greg Carter, says organising the flight was extremely complicated.
Getting the permits in a lockdown and government restrictions and airport restrictions and getting a suitable aircraft and all sorts of things.
Greg Carter says all of Chimu Adventures' clients are now home, but it's still trying to help the around 100 New Zealanders who are still stuck in Argentina and Peru. 2 German tourists hoping to get out of New Zealand are anxiously waiting to hear whether they're on a charter flight out of Auckland. As many as 100,000 foreigners could leave the country in coming weeks. Now the government has relaxed domestic travel restrictions for them. Susie Vermwald and her friend changed their South Island travel plans and made their way to Auckland. Ms Vermwald says they understand passengers will have to be prioritised for repatriation to Germany.
We are waiting for the information that our flight is the next one. But of course, I think they are taking the older people and people with some illnesses first. So they prioritize, depending on the need, you have to go home.
Susie Vermwald. There are about 12,000 Germans currently in New Zealand. Authorities are working on the security and privacy settings of a platform being used to track people returning from overseas during the lockdown. The police are texting people from the 4511 number asking permission to track the location of any individual who should be heading into isolation. Brad Cowie, an IT security expert, says the service looks like a scam when people click through to the website.
The website didn't look legitimate. The message, anyone can write that. And it came from kind of a strange number, so I initially thought it wasn't legitimate, but after doing a little bit of digging around, I found the website had links to a vendor that police had used in the past.
Brad Cowie says he's working with the police to improve the site. The police confirmed they're looking to ensure the security of the site, which will hold private data. The Health Ministry has finalised orders to bring in more ventilators from overseas, but won't say how many machines it has bought. On Wednesday, the Health Minister, David Clark, said more than 100 had been ordered. But when RNZ sought more details, the Minister and the Ministry both refused to provide any. Global demand for ventilators has soared to cope with the pandemic. Today, the Director General of Health, Ashley Bloomfield, says they're not having to repurpose existing ventilators at this stage.
We've got orders finalised. We're just finalising the dates for arrival of additional new ventilators from overseas.
Ashley Bloomfield from the Ministry of Health. 71 new COVID-19 cases have been reported in the past 24 hours, bringing the total to 868. A mining company has lost a bid to overturn a decision preventing it from taking millions of tonnes of iron sands off the coast of Taranaki. The Court of Appeal has dismissed an attempt by Trans-Tasman Resources to overturn a 2018 High Court decision quashing the original consents. It found there were multiple errors of law in the decision to grant the company mining permission. It's just after 5:04. In sport this afternoon, cricket is well placed financially to deal with the impacts of COVID-19 compared to other sports in New Zealand, but the national body is still preparing for challenges ahead. Planning underway includes the postponement or likely postponement of mid-year tours for both national teams. New Zealand cricket boss David White says they're wary because their big revenue streams come from international matches.
If we're not playing international cricket prior to Christmas, that's going to be a challenge. But I'd like to think that maybe we could play further into next year. Listen, it's very much up in the air, but we're working closely with all our stakeholders, with the venues, with other countries, And I think we'll come up with pragmatic and innovative solutions.
David White. And European football, currently at a standstill because of COVID-19, is focusing on a restart in July and August. UEFA is telling clubs and leagues that stopping competitions should be a last resort. That's the news.
Here's our 2 cents worth.
This virus and now the lockdown has changed the way I operate.
Yeah, just over a little bit. No, you've dropped down.
It's a bit more successful, Bernard, are your regular Zoom meetings. We have a bit of gin and tonic.
I'm used to people social distancing because I deal with business and economics and nobody wants to talk to me. We explain how the business news of the week affects your back pocket. 2 cents worth is on RNZ's podcast page, Apple Podcasts, and on air after the midday news on Sunday on RNZ National.
And we're funded through New Zealand On Air. Now the short forecast through to midnight tomorrow, Saturday. Northland, Auckland and Coromandel Peninsula fine for the rest of today. Cloudy periods tomorrow. A few showers in the east. Gisborne through to Wairarapa, mostly cloudy. Scattered showers mainly in Gisborne and the Wairoa district. For remaining regions of the North Island, areas of cloud in the south and east and areas of drizzle about Wellington, all clearing to become fine tomorrow. Kaikoura Coast, Canterbury, North Otago, Dunedin and Clutha, mostly cloudy, patchy drizzle morning and night. Fiordland, mainly fine today. Cloud increasing tonight, patchy drizzle tomorrow. For remaining regions of the South Island, mainly fine, but areas of cloud or fog morning and night. And at the Chatham Islands, cloudy with a few showers, clearing tomorrow afternoon. 6.5 minutes past 5.
Welcome to Checkpoint. I'm Lisa Owen. A little more than a week into the lockdown, and the Health Minister has had to apologise to the Prime Minister for not following the rules after being snapped mountain biking during the lockdown. Yesterday, a member of the public spotted David Clark's branded car by a bike track more than 2 kilometres from his house. Jacinda Ardern says he failed to lead by example, going against the repeated pleas to the public to avoid exercise where there is a higher risk of injury. Meanwhile, there are 71 new cases of COVID-19, bringing the total to 868. 13 people are in hospital, with 1 in ICU in a stable condition. And more support was announced for business today, with plans to change legislation to give company directors facing insolvency a safe harbour. Political reporter Yvette McCullough has more.
It was the Finance Minister fronting media today, having to answer for the actions of his Cabinet colleague.
And he understands that he needs to be leading by example. He didn't do that in this case, and that's why he's apologised.
In a statement, Ms Ardern says she expects ministers to set the standards they are asking New Zealanders to follow, and Mr Clark should have followed the rules. Grant Robertson says Mr Clark did not offer his resignation, and he doesn't think that's necessary.
No, I don't believe so. The Minister of Health provides a really important role, and it's one of the reasons we need him operating at full capacity as the Minister who's leading this health response.
Mr Robertson rejected suggestions there should be more stringent guidelines to avoid such misinterpretations. And he says there's no confusion now about what's expected of Mr Clark.
And as I said before, we don't want the Minister of Health out mountain biking.
Director General of Health Dr Ashley Bloomfield had this to say on whether people should be out mountain biking.
Oh, look, any physical activity should be done safely and locally. I think that's, I can reiterate that point.
Meanwhile, Dr Bloomfield says the message to test seems to be flowing through, with just under 3,500 processed yesterday. But that's still well shy of the goal of 5,000 a day. Some GPs are still complaining about not having access to enough tests.
We have plenty of swabs, but we just want to make sure that those are distributed out to where they're needed. There might be the occasional disruption in supply, but we can address that quickly. We're working on that.
The number of confirmed clusters of COVID-19 went from 6 to 10 today. The 3 biggest clusters are the Marist College with 59 people, a Bluff Wedding with 53, and the Matamata cluster of 49 people. Dr Bloomfield says the growing size shows contact tracing is working.
What that represents is that all the close contacts have been identified, they've been self-isolated and been tested if they become symptomatic. So I think it's good that we are finding those cases, because then we can take appropriate action.
Around 300 New Zealanders arrived back from overseas last night, showing the numbers returning are slowing down. But there is still confusion about what people seeing out their 14-day isolation at home are allowed to do, with the COVID-19 website today saying these people are not allowed to leave the house during this time, even for exercise. and the Ministry of Health website saying the opposite. Mr Robertson says he's not sure why there's this contradictory information, but the Ministry of Health's rule is the definitive one.
We want those people to be in effective personal self-isolation. So that means in that 14-day period they can go outside for a walk, but only on their own.
The Finance Minister also announced the government will make changes to the Companies Act to help companies facing insolvency due to COVID-19. Changes include giving directors facing significant problems a safe harbour from their insolvency duties, giving businesses the ability to place existing debts into hibernation, and allowing deadlines to be extended.
Whether real or perceived, the threat of a director being held personally liable for a company's solvency problems will likely make them inclined to advise closing down a business. A safe harbour will help them keep trading rather than prematurely closing up.
Mr Robertson says if a company was a good, functioning, solvent business before COVID-19, then it should be able to be afterwards. He doesn't think these changes will just delay the inevitable of companies going bust.
For those businesses who are facing a decision which they believe means they might need to look at liquidation, or they might believe that they are insolvent, to take a moment to pause and say, do we need to do that?
While a framework is being worked through for exactly how and when the country and the economy will move out of lockdown, no guarantees today that this pathway will be clearly laid out next week. We still don't have enough data to track whether the infection rate is being contained. But Mr Robertson says the best way to ensure the economy is able to bounce back is to keep going with the approach of putting public health first. From Parliament for Checkpoint, Yvette McCullough.
Amid all the turmoil around COVID-19, you'll see a new face emerging. Police Commissioner Andrew Costa stepped into the job at midnight, taking over from Mike Bush. I spoke to him a short time ago and asked if the Health Minister, David Clark, driving to do a mountain bike ride was a good look, given everyone else has been told to exercise close to home.
We need to take a really common sense approach to this situation. The controls are there to achieve particular outcomes. And I believe the vast majority of New Zealanders are doing the right thing because it's the right thing. Sometimes it's hard to be absolutely specific about all of the situations that might apply. And I believe the vast majority of people are getting that right. So we should encourage that, recognise that, and help anybody who maybe is unclear to do the right thing.
So does David Clark need some help to understand what the right thing is here? Did he do the wrong thing?
From what I have seen, Minister Clark has apologised, and I doubt he needs any further conversation about that.
OK, understand he has apologised, but I'm just wondering, because there's a lot of confusion about exercising and what you can and can't do. So can you be clear with us on this? Was that ideal behaviour? If a bunch of other people did that, would you be happy?
It is very difficult to be prescriptive about all of the different scenarios that might play out. We allow people to undertake exercise because that actually is healthy for people, and this is hard. People are stuck in their homes and we're only in the first week, so we need to be sensible about this. We need to make it realistic and achievable for people to stick by the intent of these controls. We allow people to access essential services. My suggestion would be people need to exercise locally. If you think about the distance that you're travelling to access your essential services, that's probably a pretty reasonable rule of thumb for the kind of range for exercise. But we can't define for every situation what it should be. And the policing approach to this is reflecting that. We police by consent. We need most people to think that the police approach is legitimate, so we need to do this respectfully. We're trying to have a calm, confident, compassionate presence that encourages people to do the right thing.
So we're on the cusp of the weekend, and there's been concerns expressed previously about the huge number of people down at Oriental Parade in Wellington and the density of people at Cornwall Park in Auckland. You know, a lot of people congregating in these areas that are nice to be in if the weather is great. So how are you going to handle it this weekend after telling people previously they need to ease off this behaviour?
We need to be clear about what the guidelines say, and I'd encourage people, if they're unclear, to go to the government's COVID-19 website. You can go for a walk. You can walk past other people. The guidance is to keep a distance of 2 metres, and from what I have observed, the vast majority of New Zealanders are doing that. I think we need to keep encouraging that, and that's what police will be doing. We have maintained a greater presence in some of these particular hotspots where the density tends to get too high. I'm not worried at this stage about what most New Zealanders are doing, which is trying to beat this thing.
Okay, so the police have a role in monitoring people returning from overseas, and you're using technology where people can opt in to tracking. How many people have agreed to be tracked in that way by the police?
So the mechanism here is that we can send a text message to people on their phones, and they can choose whether or not to reply to that text message to confirm their location. So it's an opt-in thing, and it's done by consent. We have sent text messages to roughly 8,000 people, and we've had a roughly 50% response rate. And then we are prioritising for visits the people who have not responded. So the key message here would be, if you are in self-isolation having travelled and you receive a text message of this nature, please respond to it to minimise the chance that police will need to visit you to make sure where you are. We are also doing follow-up phone checks with people, and that's enabling us to encourage them to do the right thing, and then where that doesn't work, we'll go and do a visit.
So to be clear, it's a simple text message back, or does it allow you to see where their phone is?
It does allow us to see where their phone is. I can't explain all the technical detail of that, but what I can say is they receive a text message, and when they respond to that, with their location services on their phone, it confirms via the reply what their physical location is.
The location of their phone. So how long will you continue to use that mechanism then? Is that it, that one response, or do you keep watching them for the next 14 days?
So we're able to trigger those text messages at random times, and we are obviously also still able and will do visits to check on people and their location.
So
we need to be clear here. Again, the vast majority of people who have travelled and are in self-isolation are doing the right thing. We need to recognise this will only work if the whole population understands the criticality of following the guidelines that are in place and doing it. We simply cannot be in every home and on every footpath, but what we can do is check and then use what we're learning from those checks to communicate back to people, and that's how we'll keep New Zealand safe. I think the vast majority of people have understood why this is so important, and they are doing it. And I appreciate there are some who aren't, and that's where we'll focus our effort.
It is 18 minutes past 5 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Keen for your feedback, you can text us on 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Interested to know if you've had one of those texts from the police, and have you signed on for that kind of monitoring? The Chief Justice says the COVID-19 outbreak has disrupted court business in a way not even seen during world wars. Tens of thousands of district court cases alone are now up in the air. In an unusual step, the country's top judges met journalists this morning to discuss how courts are faring and adapting during the pandemic. Our court reporter Annika Smith was there and filed this report.
Step into any courthouse around the country right now and things are very quiet. Security staff wear masks and gloves, and you'll be lucky to see anyone other than the odd court reporter, judge or registrar. Justice has gone digital in the wake of COVID-19, stripped back to priority hearings only, as most court business, gatherings by nature, doesn't comply with lockdown rules. The Chief Justice, Helen Wynne-Cullman, says the disruption is unparalleled.
I don't believe that the courts have ever been disrupted in this way. They weren't disrupted in this way through world wars. And of course, life is far more complex now than it was in the past, and the work that the courts do is both far more voluminous and more complex. So this disruption really does hit hard.
The Chief Justice, Chief Judges of District and High Courts and the Secretary of Justice briefed the media and then took questions in the High Court at Auckland this morning. Half appeared in a virtual meeting room, while others physically in court observed physical distancing. Chief High Court Judge Justice Venning reiterated the importance of courts remaining open during lockdown.
Under the Epidemic Preparedness Act and the Health Act, which constrains operations and shuts buildings, the legislation expressly excludes courts, judges' chambers and registries from those buildings because they are an essential service.
Courts are currently hearing priority proceedings during the pandemic, which are matters that relate to individual liberty, family violence, and cases where a defendant is being held in custody. Jury trials have been suspended for 2 months, pushing back nearly 60 sitting weeks in the High Court alone. In the District Court, it's estimated 60,000 cases will be adjourned as a result of the pandemic. Chief District Court Judge Hemi Tomonu says he's committed to getting cases back on track as soon as possible.
That's going to need a lot of work on our part to work with the Ministry to come up with creative solutions to try and do that. But there is a real commitment on our part to address that issue because it's not really a backlog, it's about people being affected by what's occurred with COVID.
Justice Winkelman says courts, a paper-driven, face-to-face operation by nature, have been able to digitise priority cases in little more than a month. And while some lawyers see the lockdown as a catalyst for improved court efficiency, Justice Winkelman says the current measures are temporary.
At the end of the COVID-19 emergency, we will go back to predominantly face-to-face justice conducted in courthouses around New Zealand. Those courthouses serve an important role as the local face of justice for their communities.
Secretary of Justice Andrew Kibble-White says digitising courts is a complex process, already being worked through in the medium term, but they would learn from the COVID-19 outbreak. Ātui te ko te matua ko Annika Smith-Aho.
2 of the country's biggest bus operators are being accused of gaming the system and using COVID-19 restrictions as an opportunity to reduce the amount of annual leave they owe drivers. The approach from Ritchies and GoBus is angering drivers who say they're doing their bit as essential workers and helping people without a car to get to work and the supermarket. Conan Young has the story.
All businesses want to reduce the amount of annual leave they owe workers as it sits on their books as a debt that potentially needs to be paid if a person leaves their job. But one driver, who's asked not to be identified, says it's wrong for her and her workmates to be forced to take leave at a time like this. Her voice has been disguised.
I don't plan to use my leave for something like this through a pandemic. I more want to be out there and to work through it. It's very quiet out there and I won't waste it to be sitting at home on a lockdown.
Correspondence seen by RNZ shows bus companies such as Ritchies and GoBus are guaranteed the same amount of funding they'd normally receive from the transport agency right up until the end of June. This is despite them operating a reduced weekend timetable in the country's main centres. The driver spoken to by RNZ says this money should be handed on to workers like her, instead of these businesses pocketing it for themselves.
They sit there tight with that money. What are they going to do with it? Use it for themselves? I mean, as a driver that's out there doing the dirty work, they should be utilising that money on the driver. We don't get paid no danger money, no hazard money, no nothing. We're just there to continue with that service.
First Union represents many of the affected drivers. Secretary Jared Abbott says companies seeking to gain financially from the current situation is deeply wrong.
The government have also been very clear that there's no reason why these companies should be trying to use annual leave in this time, given that they're paying the companies in full for their contract. It's just opportunism. It's double dipping.
Jared Abbott says drivers are under enough stress at the moment without having their leave entitlements eroded.
It's just really frustrating that you have this arm's length from the economic employer, which is essentially the government, that is always doing these kind of things. I mean, it's really time to question whether some of these bus companies are fit at all to be operating ratepayer-funded contracts.
The Council of Trade Unions' Richard Wagstaff says a situation where people are only able to leave their homes for a walk or to buy food is hardly the time for employers to be asking staff to take time out for rest and relaxation.
It's not really a consultative process. This is just companies, on the take in terms of subsidies or business subsidies, and using it as an opportunity to also drain their employees' leave balances.
Richard Wagstaff says the CTU is considering taking legal action against employers seeking to game the system in this way.
Companies in transport, these are essential services. These workers are going out every day, exposing themselves, working hard, keeping this country going, and here they are being ripped off through employers trying to take their annual leave balances. I think it's far too tough, and I don't think the public would think we should be treating essential service workers this way.
Finance Minister Grant Robertson says if bus companies are in receipt of government money to pay wages, then they should be passing this on to workers.
In terms of the legal position around annual leave, the law does say that if you give 14 days notice to somebody, you can ask them to take annual leave.
The head of Ritchie's Transport, Andrew Ritchie, declined to do a recorded interview, but said workers were only offered the opportunity to take leave and were not forced to do so. A GoBus spokesperson said it was important that drivers were well rested, and this was why they were being asked if they would like to take annual leave at this time. He said those who refused were given 14 days' notice, after which they were required by law to take leave. He said those with no leave owing would be paid for their contracted hours, regardless of the number they actually worked. Mō te hōtaka o te ahiahi, ko Conan Young tēnei.
Craving your favourite fast food fix during lockdown while you're not alone, Lower Hutt woman Liz McGimpsey has taken matters into her own hands and created homemade McDonald's. She's shared her facsimile fast food tips with our reporter Ruth Hill.
Liz McGimpsey admits her family doesn't eat a lot of takeaways usually, but for lockdown they decided to try a little DIY fast food. She went online and found a ready-made community of people doing likewise.
There were a lot of different recipes and they all were pretty much identical. So somebody has obviously nailed the Big Mac burger online.
Liz McGimpsey says her Big Mac was really convincing. She made the sauce from scratch and steamed the buns as per instruction.
It definitely tasted more wholesome than a Big Mac sauce. It was delicious. But it was definitely more filling than a Big Mac burger from McDonald's.
Replicating KFC chicken was a bit trickier.
I tried a single coat and then a double-dipped coat, and the double-dipped coat definitely came out better, but it still didn't have the greasiness. It tasted too wholesome to be KFC.
She found there's nothing healthy about KFC's coleslaw recipe, however, but it found favour with 5-year-old Frida and little brothers Gordon and Billy.
I made coleslaw to go with the chicken. That required half a cup of sugar for 4 servings of coleslaw. They ate mouthfuls and mouthfuls of the coleslaw. I've never seen them eat salad in the same way before.
Mrs McGimpsey is keen to attempt a Burger King Whopper using the official recipe shared by Burger King France, especially for the lockdown. But she says she needs a little break first.
After doing McDonald's and KFC, I ate Brussels sprouts for dinner the next night. I just couldn't really stomach anything other than Brussels sprouts. It seemed quite appealing.
A Facebook group called Homemade McDonald's has 27,000 members. Its founder, Melbourne artist Joel Cornell, says his fake fast food journey started a couple of years ago when he spotted some yellow American-type cheese in his local Coles supermarket and decided to make Big Macs for a barbecue. He started the Facebook group a year ago, encouraging people to post photos and recipes, and, in his words, it went viral. He's noticed a spike in uploads since McDonald's all around the world began closing their doors due to COVID-19.
There's been a lot of UK submissions recently, and I know they're in full lockdown. And there's been some Australian stuff, but definitely something you guys could do over in New Zealand is make Big Macs at home.
Mr. Cornell hasn't received any cease and desist notices from McDonald's copyright lawyers.
Look, I'm going to go out on a limb and say McDonald's probably love it because it's probably promotional stuff. But they did contact me about the T-shirt, of which there's a hamburger flipping you off. And that was sort of, they were like, oh, we're just going to check with our team to see if this breaches, anything. And they never got back to me, so...
Joel Cornell says it's cheaper and tastier to make your own Big Mac at home, but he still buys takeaways. He's a bit embarrassed to admit it, but he bought one this week because Melbourne is not on lockdown.
I am deeply ashamed of my country's reaction to what's happening and the the COVID stuff. So, just to say, you guys are doing really well. I'm not, love your Prime Minister, and I'm not poo-pooing on the fact that your McDonald's isn't open, but it is open for us.
So there you have it, fast food lovers. There's no need to go without. Source yourself some gherkin relish and give the homemade Big Mac a go. For Checkpoint, Ruth Hill.
On Checkpoint on RNZ National, the SOS Cafe, where you can pre-purchase coffees and massages in lockdown to enjoy on the other side while keeping businesses afloat in the meantime. We cold call some MPs to see what they're up to in lockdown. And on that subject, exercising in lockdown, how much is too much? We'd love your feedback. By the way, Ruth has put that Big Mac recipe on our webpage so you can check it out. You can text us on 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, Facebook us, Checkpoint, or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. But first, here's Paul Brennan with the headlines.
Thanks, Lisa. The government is introducing new legislation to help businesses affected by COVID-19. It's hoped the temporary changes to the Companies Act could prevent businesses from becoming insolvent. The Finance Minister says the measures will help keep New Zealanders in jobs and cushion the economic effect of the coronavirus. The first charter flight to repatriate stranded German tourists has taken off from Auckland Airport. Air New Zealand says it's working with several governments on requests for repatriation charters. As many as 100,000 foreigners could leave the country in coming weeks, now that domestic travel restrictions have been relaxed for them. The Health Ministry has finalised orders to bring in more ventilators from overseas, but won't say how many machines it has bought. On Wednesday, the Health Minister said more than 100 had been ordered, but he would not provide more details. 71 new COVID-19 cases have been reported in the past 24 hours, bringing the total to 868. The Chief Justice says the coronavirus outbreak has disrupted courts in a way not even seen during the World Wars. The country's top judges have convened a rare meeting with journalists to discuss how courts are faring and adapting during the pandemic. The tourism industry has welcomed the news American Airlines will resume flying to New Zealand later this year. The airline confirmed it will recommence its service between Auckland and Los Angeles at the end of October. It will also launch new seasonal services from LA to Christchurch and from Dallas to Auckland. And two Taranaki iwi say a Court of Appeal decision today, effectively putting a halt to Trans-Tasman Resources plans to mine millions of tonnes of iron sands off the coast of Taranaki, is a significant day for all Māori. The court found the Environmental Protection Authority failed to recognise the relationship between tangata whenua and the marine environment when granting those consents. Those are the headlines.
Welcome back to Checkpoint. I'm Lisa Owen. It is time for business news now with Nona Peltier. Nona, Sky City has announced 200 staff are going to lose their jobs, with all others being asked to take a pay cut. What are the details?
Well, the company has done the numbers and they're saying that they've lost about $90 million in the past month in revenue alone and $20 million of costs. That's all labor costs. So they had to take some action, and that's what they decided to do. So those 200 staff are their salaried employees at the higher levels of the company. They're wage earners. They're going to be taking, they're going to have about 80% of their pay. And the more senior staff are going to take cuts between 20 and 40%. In the end, this is going to be a much smaller business. It's going to be more domestic focused in the future. And they have let go of their property investment manager because I don't think they're going to be doing very much expansion in the future. Their share price dropped 11% today. And overall, the market was doing not too badly considering the volatility we're seeing with oil prices and so forth. In Asia. So we finished up 0.7%. That's 65 points up to 9,935 compared with, say, Australia, which was down about 1.5% around now. Dollar is little changed. Really, it's still kind of in the doldrums there. 59.1 US cents, 97.4 Australian, and 47.8 British pence. And this is really just a US dollar story. There's a lot of demand for it again.
Thanks, Nona. That's Nona Peltier with our business wrap this Friday. And also, if you can't get enough of business, this week on 2 cents worth, the team is looking at how amateur investors are weathering the volatile stock market. A scheme to help prop up cafes and other small businesses during lockdown has gone ballistic, according to its founder. Since SOS Cafe launched last week, customers have placed more than 2,000 orders worth nearly $100,000. Sharon Brett-Kelly reports.
Lockdown has wiped out Rachel Arkitt's 7-day-a-week massage therapy business in Christchurch.
100%. There is no income. We're entirely dependent on clients walking in the door. We have no clients walking in the door. In fact, the doors are closed. So none of us, either myself or the other 3 therapists, have got any revenue coming in.
She's eligible for the government's wage subsidy scheme and is deferring some payments.
Managing to keep my head above water, but that's not going to last long. I've still got expenses that need to be paid for. So I still have a mortgage and insurance and rates on that property, as well as all the other general maintenance costs that I'm obviously not having to pay for at the moment, but they'll still be there when we come out of lockdown, and I won't be earning any income.
Ms. Arkitt is one of 600 small business owners who have signed on to the SOS Cafe website.
It's gone absolutely ballistic in the last few days.
David Downs dreamed up SOS Cafe as a way that New Zealanders still earning money can help their favourite local survive. It works by offering customers vouchers to purchase now, which can be cashed in at a later date. Word spread quickly, and now it's been expanded to include other businesses such as a barber and a dog massage shop.
The whole point is they get the cash now when they need to pay their rent and pay their overheads, and they can deliver the services later. So from their point of view, it's about cash flow, which is critical for a small business.
Things were looking grim for Wellington Brewery and Bar Little Bear Quarter until customers started buying vouchers on SOS Cafe. Dan Hargreaves is a co-owner.
Well, I suppose it's kind of come out of the blue as a bit of a blessing, really, because we were kind of getting our thinking caps on about what we could do. Even we've had a couple of breweries, small breweries that we use that supply us. Even they've sort of thrown in a couple of $50 or $100 here and there. So, yeah, it's been really good to be able to pay those drinks forward, really, to be able to say, well, look, when we do reopen, you can cash in this voucher, and that's really helped us pay those bills for this month and probably the next month moving forward.
The Pay It Forward concept is taking off.
So here's a way everyone who has the ability to purchase products or gift vouchers should help.
Website Shop It Forward was set up by Greyhound's Adam Blackwell when the lockdown brought his bike business to a halt, including online sales.
That could have been the lifeline that would get us through this period. So being a non-essential goods supplier meant that we just couldn't do anything, and that's really what led to the idea of Shop It Forward.
His message to New Zealanders with the money?
Please spend it now with online businesses that are Kiwi-owned and small New Zealand companies that really need the support. And as soon as the rules around couriers are relaxed, then those businesses will send the products to you. And it's really just to try and get that money into circulation and into the cash flow of these small businesses that really need it right now.
About 500,000 small businesses operate in New Zealand. They employ 30% of the working population. Not all will survive the lockdown. Rachel Arkitt doesn't want to think about that prospect, but she hopes people supporting Pay It Forward schemes are willing to take the risk.
This is the best way that they can help out the businesses to ensure the best chances of survival through this. So there isn't a guarantee that anything that people can do to help out, any vouchers that people can buy, is another step to ensuring the viability of that business.
And shop with the small Kiwi businesses that you can support right now to keep New Zealand working.
For Checkpoint, Sharon Brett-Kelly.
Jacinda Ardern and her Finance Minister Grant Robertson are in the same bubble, and we're hearing from them on an almost daily basis. But what's happened to the rest of your 120 MPs since Parliament shut up shop due to COVID-19? They too are stuck in their bubbles, but what are they up to? Like, really, what are they doing? We cold call a few of them to find out.
I'm in a T-shirt and shorts at the moment.
Don't normally ask people this, but what are you wearing, Paula?
Right now?
Yes, right now. Honesty is the best policy.
Right now I'm in bike shorts and a singlet.
Going to be truthful, but I've actually got my gym gears on.
In my tracksuit and top.
You're Your MPs as you have probably never dared to imagine them. Except maybe for Ron Mark. So, Ron, don't think you're special. I'm asking everybody this. What are you wearing right now?
I am right now, if you video called me, you would find me in my suit, my tie, my service shoes, sitting at the dining table, which I've set up like a command post with my laptop and all my files all around me.
Oh, sounds like you might be behaving above your station, Ron. Have you got aspirations?
That'd be nice. Well, one day I hope to be the Minister of Defence. Oh, that's right, I am.
Checkpoint called at a time MPs would normally be in the House, not their house, probably firing questions at each other, so we thought we'd handle the questions bit.
This is James.
Hello, James. Lisa Owen calling from Checkpoint at RNZ. How are you doing?
Hi.
Hey, we're just doing a welfare and productivity check with our MPs. Are you happy to answer a question? James Shaw, that is, Green Party co-leader. Is anyone in your bubble trying your patience?
No, not at all, but I think the reverse may be true.
What makes you say that?
Well, my wife isn't used to having another person in her house because I'm normally not here with the schedule that I've got.
Has your wife given you a few extra jobs, seeing as you're in the house?
I'm going to be washing the windows this afternoon.
What are you using? Can you give us some tips?
Warm soapy water, I think.
So when you're not working on all of this stuff and your brain needs a bit of a rest, other than washing the windows, are you getting out for your local walk, or what are you doing?
Yes, yeah. So I am going for a walk once a day, which I find helps tremendously.
Do you listen to anything while you do that? Music or...?
No, because I'm largely spending my days on conference calls, and so it's actually nice to just be able to get a bit of silence and just hear the birds in the trees. Speaking.
When Checkpoint dialed up Labour's Tamati Coffee, he was rocking a sartorial potpourri.
So I've actually put quite a respectable shirt over the top of my gym gear, and actually on the Zoom for you, I'm looking very professional. But I worked out that actually staying at home and not moving was frustrating, and also not good on the figure, Lisa. So I've implemented a morning walk, and that's an hour long, and I walk around the neighbourhood, and then in the evening we actually do a big walk, kind of a stair climb. I live on a hill. And so we start at the front of the driveway and we walk to the top of the hill and back about 10 times with baby in the front pouch to create a bit of extra weight on the trip as well and make it worthwhile.
Were you diving in the pantry a little too often?
Well, actually, one of the lovely things about being at home is that people have decided to cook. I'm sitting here in front of a big pot of tea and also some freshly baked chocolate chip cookies.
Wow, someone is honing their culinary skills. Have you learnt any new recipes?
No, but I found out how to use the oven.
Exercise and food are reoccurring themes, the newly important rituals of lockdown. Judith, it's Lisa Owen calling from Radio New Zealand's Checkpoint program.
I've just been out for a walk with my bubble. My husband and I have walked around our neighbourhood, and I'm just about to have some lunch, and so I'm still in my tracksuit.
So what's for lunch today?
Actually, it's toast, because I have frozen bread. So I've taken it out, I've popped it in the toaster, and I've taken a quarter of an avocado and I've put some tomato on it.
Aren't you missing your buddies in the National Party?
No, because we're constantly talking on the phone, and we are, we're just emailing each other. We're talking, and we're continuing to be in contact. But yeah, I guess that look, I don't miss a lot because I grew up quite solitary. I'm possibly not as social a person as some.
While almost all of these MPs were in their civvies when we called, they're not just zooming around the block. They're virtual zooming too. Conference calls, hooey this, hooey that, virtual select committees, constituency calls, all of government.
Well, I just work the hours I have to work.
Who's messaging you on that flippin' computer in the background?
Oh, yeah, well, I can turn that down, actually. This is the way it is. It's my life. Everybody wants wants something.
Well, tell us who it is. Tell us who it is, Ron. Who's messaging you?
That was from my mate, the former Mayor of Charter. And of course, as a Minister of Defence, Minister of Veterans, I'm very worried about making sure my veterans have the support they need out there and their families as well. And of course, the Defence Force is very heavily engaged with all government agencies.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have to say that the hours that people are pulling are at least the same that they were before we went into lockdown. The circumstances are obviously very different, and our methods of talking to constituents and finding out what their issues are and working out how to resolve those in the current crisis are different, but everyone's working really hard on that.
Yeah, I'm still getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning and ploughing my way through, trying to get back to everyone as I can, doing a lot of the prep work for the select committee, thinking a lot about how we kind of pull ourselves out of this and what it can do. And I think, if anything, I'm doing more local work, which I hope is a plus.
But actually, if I could do a shout-out to Big Two, to all of my constituents, just to say I'm still here. Check out the Facebook page if you want daily updates, but also stay home and save lives.
That aside, we all need a break.
Hi, this is Ron Mark. I took a wander out this morning with my goats, or our goats, and the chooks and the cattle, and it was really quite chuffed to find that we got mushrooms growing in the paddock. So, bit of fresh air, and I am going out for a long walk on the road soon, about 4 o'clock.
Do the goats have names?
Sadly, they do, yeah, which probably means they're assured of longevity. They will probably never ever end up feeling the butcher's knife.
So what are they called? What are they called?
Oh, Nan and Shanti.
Not counting the ferals, Ron's in a bubble of 3 with his partner Christine and her daughter.
Christine?
Hey, Lisa, what's that?
Hey, I just wanted to know, is he carrying his weight here, or is there some more that you'd like him to do around the house?
Lisa, he is carrying his weight. Almost. He was going to make a casserole, but got called off to do some work, so that didn't happen. But I'm anticipating in the next 24 hours there'll be a recipe pulled out and some meat defrosted, and the crock pot will be not doing too bad.
So but not goat casserole. We hear that those 2 goats are ring fenced. They've got a happy life.
Oh no, over my dead body actually.
Hi, is that Paula?
Yeah, hi.
How are you finding the whole lockdown thing?
It's surreal, that's for sure, and you sort of wake up in the morning and think, well, I've got to do, this conference call, and I've got to do that, and I've got to, check that email and follow up something with constituent, and you think, oh, I might just pop and see Mum, and then the reality hits, and you go, no, you won't be.
Who or what are you missing the most?
Certainly miss my grandchildren probably the most. It feels like they're so close and yet so far away. And it's not quite, it's not quite the same not getting the cuddles.
Yeah. Hey, just before you go, can you share a guilty lockdown secret with us? Are you doing anything like consuming chocolate, Netflix binging? What can you share with us?
I am podcast binging. Here's what you're looking for. Here's the absolute shameful part of it, is I haven't been exercising a lot before this, so I decided I would do it every day. And I do wear a bum bag, so it's the only thing I can put my cell phone in so that I can still listen to my podcast while I walk.
I'm in.
So there you have it. That is what some of your MPs are up to, still working if in their leisure gear while they do it. It is 12 minutes to 6. I'm Lisa Owen and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. We're keen for your feedback. You can text us on 2101, you can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Millions of religious people around the world are preparing to celebrate major feasts and festivals while in lockdown at home. Next week, Christians mark Holy Week and Easter, while Jewish people celebrate the Passover. And later in the month, Ramadan begins for Muslims. It's meant upheaval and disappointment, but it's also prompted communities to use technology and innovate. Alex Perrottet reports.
For only the second time, the Jewish community in New Zealand has closed its synagogues. The first was in fear after the mosque attacks last year. Rabbi Nathaniel Friedler says the commandment to gather has now turned on its head.
The most important value, the most important commandment anyone can adhere to is saving lives. So if something else needs to be pushed because of that, that's unfortunate, but very, very important to understand that lives, preserving lives, is the most important commandment in Judaism.
Instead, he's taking prayers online. He says the biggest issue is next week's 8-day Passover festival, where Jews eat unleavened bread and other foods usually bought from just the 2 kosher stores in the country. So there's a rush with online bookings and a special procedure in place.
The matzah, the unleavened bread, and the special wine that we have for Passover, and all these goods you can't find anywhere else in the supermarket. So people will book a time, so a person at a time, 10 minutes in a shop, so no other people around, and quickly go out, bring his shop back, the next customer coming in.
The Auckland store is doing most of the deliveries, and they're thankful that the produce can be delivered by courier.
Kei te ngata mātua o te tamaiti o te wairua tapu. Amen. Welcome to the Chapel of Holy Cross Seminary on this, the 5th Sunday of Lent. We gather at a time when we as a nation and as a world are most in need of God's grace and strength.
Catholic Auxiliary Bishop Michael Gillan was ordained just under a month ago in South Auckland, but instead of tending his new flock, he's confined to home and keeping busy saying a live-streamed Mass.
We've had up to 25,000 people click into our daily Mass. People have found this really helpful. The daily Mass has been recorded from churches from around the diocese and even from some priests' bedrooms where they've been celebrating Mass if they're on lockdown.
Some Christian leaders say they're concerned that if the lockdown lasts too long, people will get out of the habit of going to church. But Bishop Michael says he thinks it could be the other way around.
I wouldn't be surprised as when we finally pass through this, more people will gather.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allah.
The Muslim call to prayer was famously broadcast all over the country just over a year ago, following the March 15 mosque terror attacks. Now it won't even happen in mosques. Even Saudi Arabia has told the 2.5 million Muslims from around the world who prepare to make the Hajj pilgrimage to Mecca and Medina in July to put their plans on hold. Ikhlaq Kashkari is the president of the New Zealand Muslim Association, and his community too cancelled mosque prayers well before the lockdown started.
That was really obviously for the benefit of the community because of how our prayers are conducted on the carpet and when you kneel on the ground, and the risk was higher from transmission perspective.
He says Ramadan prayers will start while in lockdown, and if it continues through May, the major festival of Eid al-Fitr will also be held at home. He says people are tuning in online and not just for prayers and sermons.
We are working at the moment in finalising process for burial, and because of constraints, what we can and can't do, we are looking at live streaming of the funeral when that happens, and unless the family can watch it and friends can watch it.
Sister Johanna Kyle Penn is originally from Samoa and has been a Carmelite sister at Mount Albert in Auckland for 20 years. She's closed the gates and only opens for food deliveries. The priest who usually comes for daily Mass is staying away. 2 of the sisters are in their 80s and 2 in their 90s. She says she's been telling people to follow the government and medical advice.
Don't give up on scientists. They are there for a reason, to help us. And God has given them that knowledge to help humanity and to find solutions for illnesses.
She says next week's Easter feast will be historic, and they'll be tuning in online full of expectation to watch Pope Francis with an empty St. Peter's Square. For Checkpoint, Alex Perrottet.
One of the most significant global events since World War II. That's how many history teachers believe the COVID-19 pandemic will be seen in the future. So how can we help historians and future generations understand this moment in time? Lydia Batham found out.
The saying goes, today's news is tomorrow's chip paper. But what's happening right now will likely become part of the history curriculum. Quite how soon is up for debate.
I think there is that 15 to 20 year almost generational cycle, which I think qualifies something as an historical event rather than a current event. something becoming a historical event almost has that character of being something from in the past rather than something that's influencing our day-to-day.
That's Chris Dunn. He's head of e-learning and social sciences at Auckland Grammar.
It looks to me like the most significant historical event since the Cuban Missile Crisis. But future people might point back at that and laugh at me for being over the top. I don't know. But certainly this presents an existential crisis to societies globally, it would seem. And we really haven't seen anything like that, I guess, since the Second World War.
Catherine Reeple's the head of history at Columbia College in Dunedin and vice chair of the New Zealand History Teachers Association. She notes a significant and similar event from a little over 100 years ago has only recently been remembered.
Suddenly now we're very aware of articles talking about the Spanish flu and, the terrible pandemic of 1918, soldiers bringing back the flu, pictures in Dunedin outside the town hall where it was spread. And, just how devastating it was to New Zealand and the world. A lot of people, though, in New Zealand didn't seem to know or be that aware of what an impact that had at the time. It's only now when the newspapers are looking back and comparing this to that pandemic that people are thinking, oh, gosh, that was really devastating.
So what can we do to preserve our memories of this time and make sure it doesn't get forgotten?
There's something that's going through the New Zealand Teachers Association and also through the social studies Facebook pages, and it's called Eyewitness to History, and it's breaking down what are primary sources, so something created at the time, and then how you could create something meaningful about your experiences or about regional or international experiences during this time of crisis.
To create some variety in those primary sources, the New Zealand History Teachers Association has set up a competition.
Now, it could be, for example, a diary entry or just a written reflection, but it could be a pandemic poem or a rap, or you could put some words on a famous song. It doesn't have to be in a very, very serious format. It's just a personal reflection in a format that you would really enjoy. And again, with that, it could be a total range of emotions. It might be uplifting or really bleak. It could be hysterical or desperate. It just totally depends on, again, that wide range of experiences of people and families under lockdown at the moment. So we thought that might be a really good way of getting something unique and meaningful that captures the moment, that isn't just all in one format of a diary entry.
There are two other categories in that competition. One involves teenagers recreating historical scenes at home and capturing it in a picture or a 20-second video. The other is to create a photo diary of life in lockdown. Entries will close on the 1st of July and 3 winners from each category will win $100. Another idea is to put together a time capsule. Chris Dunn has some suggestions.
I think there's probably 3 categories of things that you might put in there. So there's those formal messages that come out, and maybe that's paper, and maybe the vernacular as well, that's voices of people, and maybe that's paper, and maybe these are digitally recorded as well and put into your capsule on a flash drive if that's something that's going to be readable in 2083. And I think that probably there's a third category, which is artefacts, things from now. And so for New Zealand, that might mean examples of the official literature being distributed, the white and yellow signs that we're seeing around the place, and maybe testing kits, seeds grown from the garden that was hastily planted out back of the house by Mum and Dad last weekend.
One thing going into his...
a roll of toilet paper.
The history books on COVID-19 are far from being written, but we can all play our part in capturing what this experience was like so we can share it for generations to come. For Checkpoint, Lydia Batham.
OK, time to get to some of your feedback before the news on David Clark using his car to then go to a mountain bike cycle track. This person says how absolutely pathetic, someone dobbing in the health minister. I travel more than that distance he travelled to my local walkway that is in my community, and this is within the rules, says Kay. Someone else, though, Fiona from Christchurch, says David Clark's actions make me furious. I'd like to drive to the beach for a walk, but have not allowed myself, as per advice, to exercise locally, not to drive drive to a different location. Clark just decided to do what he liked, entitled and elitist. One rule for the masses and another for the powers that be, says Fiona from Christchurch. Eddie says, I live very near David Clark and use the same big easy trail as a means of keeping fit during the lockdown. He lives on the same street as the track and it's within his neighbourhood. A media beat up. Thanks, Eddie. And then this other person says, it's hardly mountain biking. The tracky road is in his neighbourhood, fully gravel, 2 metres wide and only 4 degrees steep. Safer than riding on the road, reckons Adrian. Fergal, come in, Fergal. We have a text or an email from your parents. My 12-year-old son, Fergal, has asked me every day, is Paul Brennan in the office or working from home? For some reason, he is particularly interested or concerned about his welfare. Maybe it's because he can see you, Lisa, in the studio. Well, Fergal, good news. Paul Brennan is absolutely well and healthy, but he is not in my work bubble, so we can't be in the studio together. Here he is, looking good.
RNZ News at 6. I'm Paul Brennan. The government has thrown another lifeline to businesses to try to stop them folding under the pressure of COVID-19. Temporary changes will be made to the Companies Act, which the Finance Minister Grant Robertson says includes giving directors of companies a safe harbour from insolvency duties. Mr Robertson says the changes also enable businesses affected by coronavirus to hibernate debts until they start trading normally again.
It is inevitable that some businesses are going to go into liquidation, but these measures provide an accessible and pragmatic means of helping some businesses to weather the storm in a way that does as little harm as possible to their creditors' interests.
Grant Robertson says the legislation will be introduced as soon as possible. 8 tourists who had been stuck in South America are now back in the country after getting on a flight chartered by a travel company. Travel company Chimu Adventures organised the flight for its customers and others who were stuck in South America. Rachel Graham reports.
Chimu Adventures co-founder Greg Carter says all of their customers are now out of South America, but they know there are about 100 New Zealanders still in Argentina and Peru. One of those in Peru is Marie Larson. She says they have had no update from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade about progress on getting them home and are feeling frustrated. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade says its officials are working exceptionally hard to explore options to help New Zealanders stuck in Peru get home. This is Rachel Graham.
The first charter flight to repatriate stranded German tourists has taken off from Auckland Airport. The Air New Zealand flight to Frankfurt via Vancouver is the first of a number of flights organised by Germany, expected to depart from Auckland and Christchurch. The airline says daily flights are scheduled through to next Wednesday, with more to come. It's working with several governments on requests for flights. The new police commissioner says officers will be checking up on returning New Zealanders who do not respond to a new tracking method. Andrew Costa took over from Mike Bush today. He has told Checkpoint around 8,000 people have been sent a text asking them to confirm their location during their self-isolation. He says half have responded. The Finance Minister Grant Robertson says the Health Minister did not lead by example when he went mountain biking during the lockdown. David Clark drove to a bike track more than 2 kilometres from his Dunedin home yesterday. The government has repeatedly asked the public to avoid activities where there is a higher risk of injury while the country is at level 4. Mr Robertson says he doesn't think Dr Clark's mistake shows that clearer rules are needed around exercise. Dr Clark has apologised to the Prime Minister. The White House is expected to ask Americans to wear face masks to help combat the spread of COVID-19. The country's Health Institute has previously not recommended face masks for healthy people. Here's our correspondent, Jagruti Dave.
Vice President Mike Pence said at today's briefing that guidance was coming over the next few days on Americans wearing face masks. President Trump said the guidelines wouldn't be mandatory.
If people wanted, as an example on the masks, if people wanted to wear them, they can. If people wanted to use scarves, which they have, many people have them, they can. In many cases, the scarf is better. It's thicker.
Some reports are suggesting these guidelines would only be for Americans in coronavirus hotspots such as New York. The White House's Coronavirus Task Force coordinator, Dr. Deborah Birx, said they don't want to send a signal that a mask is an equivalent or substitute for the presidential guidelines that have already gone out.
Jagruti Dave reporting the Health Ministry here is keeping a close watch on the American review. Taranaki iwi say a court decision today effectively halting plans to mine iron sands off the coast of Taranaki is a significant day for all Māori. Te Runanga o Ngāti Ruanui and Te Kahui o Rauru were parties to the 2018 High Court decision, which quashed consents granted to Trans-Tasman Resources. The Court of Appeal found the Environmental Protection Authority failed to recognise the kaiti-akitanga relationship between tangata whenua and the marine environment. Ngāti Ruanui Kaiarataki Debbie Ngarewa-Packer says that is huge.
The decision from the Court of Appeal just slams EPA and raises just how shamelessly iwi interests were disregarded.
Debbie Ngarewa-Packer. Trans-Tasman Resources says it's considering the decision before commenting. It's 4.5 minutes past 6. In sport this evening, New Zealand Cricket says the immediate financial future of the country's leading players won't be affected by the COVID-19 crisis. The national body has confirmed the White Ferns tour to Sri Lanka is postponed, while the Black Caps tours to the Northern Hemisphere and West Indies are in serious doubt. Pay for centrally contracted players and staff is safe for now, but NZC boss David White says future cuts for players can't be ruled out.
Both Black Caps and White Ferns will receive their full contract remuneration through the 31st of July. That's no problem at all. But as far as next financial year, I think it's too soon to tell, depending on what the program is.
David White. And that's the news.
This is a COVID-19 official government announcement. New Zealand is at alert level 4. Only businesses who've registered to sell essential non-food items with the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment can do so. All stores selling these essential items must adhere to strict guidelines to avoid the spread of COVID-19. This includes limiting sales to items that keep people warm, replace key household appliances, or maintain people's health. If you need to order, do so responsibly, only purchasing items that are absolutely necessary to help your household safely isolate, stay connected to work, or study from home. Unite against COVID-19. Go to covid19.govt.nz for more information.
Now the short forecast through to midnight tomorrow, Saturday. Updated less than an hour ago by Met Service. Northland, Auckland and Coromandel Peninsula fine for the rest of today. Cloudy periods tomorrow. A few showers in the east. Gisborne to Wairarapa and Wellington, mostly cloudy. Scattered showers mainly in Gisborne and Wairoa district. Cloud and drizzle clearing from Wellington tomorrow, becoming fine. For remaining regions of the North Island, mainly fine apart from areas of morning and evening cloud. Kaikoura Coast, Canterbury, North Otago, Dunedin and Clutha, mostly cloudy, patchy drizzle morning and night. Fiordland, mainly fine today, cloud increasing tonight, patchy drizzle tomorrow. Remaining regions of the South Island, mainly fine but areas of cloud or fog morning and night. Chatham Islands, cloudy periods with a few showers clearing tomorrow afternoon. Right on 6:07. News and weather again at 7.
Welcome back. This is Checkpoint. As many as 100,000 foreigners could leave the country soon. Now, the government has relaxed domestic travel restrictions for people who want to get out of Aotearoa. They are now allowed to fly domestically and drive when they have a confirmed and scheduled international flight home. Many are eagerly awaiting repatriation information. Others aren't in such a rush to go. Chinyu reports.
Foreign Affairs Minister Winston Peters says people can book domestic flights, drive a rental car, or use ride-sharing services and public transport. But an important principle must apply.
All of which will be seeking to enforce physical distancing requirements. But there are 5 options of there go to the airport and also to fly between airports to get out of Auckland in the main.
British tourists Bob Wordsworth and his wife Cheryl are staying in Timaru Top 10 holiday park. Mr. Wordsworth booked flights from Christchurch to Auckland and then the UK immediately after hearing the policy change last night. He says he doesn't know what he's going back to, maybe further self-isolation, but is somehow relieved.
At least we know we're going back, whereas 2 days ago we hadn't got a clue when we were likely to go back. So I think it's good that they've lifted the restrictions on the travel so people can make plans.
The holiday park owner Gordon Collister says he has 40 foreign nationals from around the world staying there. He says no one has left yet, but like Mr. Wordsworth, many of them are making plans.
Most of the guests will take repatriation when it becomes available. There are a few who would still hoping that after 4 weeks they'll be able to resume their holiday.
German tourist Johannes Philipp, also staying at the holiday park, is one of those who's not in a rush. He says seats on the government-chartered flights are limited, and he wants to save them for those who need it more.
We feel here as safe and as home as at home, and we have no real reason to be back at a certain date. And as I said before, there are so many people, 12,000 Germans who want to go home immediately. And there are many who really urgently have to go home.
Susie Womwart and her friend are also from Germany. As the COVID crisis escalated, they changed their travel plans and drove to Auckland to wait to be evacuated. They are eagerly waiting to hear whether they will be able to board one of the government-chartered flights. Ms. Womwart welcomes the change.
I think that's a good decision because everybody was really desperate to go home, and now we are finally allowed to. And we have been close to the airport already since 2 weeks, but other people are not. And I think it's a good decision that they can travel to the airports as well now.
For Canadian boatie Serge Robitaille, who docked in the Marlborough Sounds, the news doesn't make much difference. He's waiting for further travel restrictions to be lifted so he can travel again.
We live aboard our boat. We're traveling slowly around the world. And leaving the boat in New Zealand without knowing when we can come back and pick it up, and that creates some, big questions.
Auckland Airport says passengers are only able to enter its international terminal if they arrive 3 hours before their flight and they have a confirmed booking and a valid passport. Mo te horaka o te ahiahi nei kua Chen Leo aho.
8 more tourists who had been stuck in South America have arrived back in New Zealand, but there's no good news on the horizon for around 80 others still stuck in Peru. A chartered flight leaving from Uruguay was put on for 136 stranded Australians and 8 New Zealanders. They'd been on a chartered cruise which had been unable to disembark in Argentina as planned back on March 21st. Rachel Graham has more.
The flight was arranged by Chimu Adventures, who had also chartered the cruise ship. Chimu Adventures co-founder Greg Carter says piecing together the flight was extremely difficult.
We had a lot of diplomatic toing and froing and basically trying, first of all, to get a secure landing site or a place to port the ship, which ended up happening in Montevideo after several attempts in Argentina. Then obviously getting the permits and the lockdown and government restrictions and airport restrictions and getting an suitable aircraft and all sorts of things. Yes, it was complicated.
While those travellers are now homeward bound, Chimu estimates that around 80 to 100 New Zealanders are still stuck in Peru and around another 30 in Argentina. On Sunday, another flight chartered by Chimu Adventures left Peru without 24 New Zealanders after complications around whether they were allowed to board. One of those travellers, Marie Larson, says they have heard no positive news from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs about when they might get to return home.
It's just frustrating. It feels as if nothing's happening, partly because we were told to hunker down and be prepared to stay here. And so when we don't hear if anything is being planned, we feel like that's all we can do, hunker down and wait.
Marie and Trevor Larson are at least in the capital city of Lima, where any flights home are most likely to leave from. New Zealander Holly Bates is in a small city, around 20 hours drive from Lima, and in a country which is under a total lockdown. Her partner is an Australian and was told today that over the next 4 days, the Australian government will arrange transport from the regional areas to a major city and then hopefully a flight leaving for Australia.
I'd love to hope that the New Zealand and the Australian government can work together because to me they're so close as to where you have to fly to. I just think it would be silly not to work together. I guess as well in my head I look at how many Australians are here and also how many New Zealanders are here and I don't even think that would fill up a full plane. So I just would like to hope that they would work together to get us all home.
She says her partner has been told he will get more information in around 4 days, and she's just hoping by then she too will be on her way home. Chimu Adventures says all of its travellers are now home, but it will continue to work to help bring home anyone else who is stuck in South America. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs says its officials are working exceptionally hard to explore options to help the New Zealanders stuck in Peru get home. It says it is in contact with its Australian counterparts to share information and, when possible, to work together on solutions to help out our nationals overseas. For Checkpoint, this is Rachel Graham.
The police are working to ensure the security and quality of tracking software being used during the nationwide lockdown. Some people who have entered the country in the past fortnight have been sent a text message by police asking them for permission to track their location on their phone. But as our police reporter Ben Strang reports, there are some issues with the system and some people think it looks like a scam.
The police are using the system because they don't have enough officers to physically check if each person is remaining in isolation. And so they're asking travellers returning home to consent to a GPS tracking system which is run through a link to a website. Brad Cowie is an expert in IT security and computer science. He was sent screenshots of the SMS messages and the website itself and says the system isn't convincing.
The website didn't look legitimate. The message, anyone can write that. And it came from kind of a strange number, so I initially thought it wasn't legitimate, but after doing a little bit of digging around, I found the website had links to a vendor that police had used in the past.
Mr. Cowie says he had concerns about the look of the website first and foremost, because it was similar to how a scam would appear. But there were other deeper issues he was also worried about involving privacy issues. He also says there were basic actions someone could take to bypass the tracking technology, meaning the site might not be reliable. The police were alerted to his concerns and are working with him to make improvements.
Within sort of an hour, they'd fixed all the important pressing problems I'd found, and then they've kind of been working through. There's some harder problems to fix around making the website look a bit more legitimate. I understand there's some privacy concerns because there's no privacy policy on the webpage at the moment, and it's been mentioned that this is an optional step and you need to grant your consent to be able to give your location up. And then there's also concerns around whether the website and tech system can track you accurately. I have questions and concerns whether it can actually guarantee whether it knows where someone is at a given time.
There are other worries about the security on the site. RNZ has talked to a number of tech experts who say the site doesn't have advanced security. There are fears the data of people using the service could be stolen. In a statement, the police says it has made moves to ensure the security of the platform. It says they're working on further enhancements to the site, which was created by a third-party provider 6 years ago, initially to help in search and rescue situations. The police say those receiving text messages from 4511 are asked to click on a hyperlink and share their location. If people don't respond and give permission, the police say they may follow up with a personal visit. The Privacy Commissioner, John Edwards, says he's been briefed by the police on the platform and says he's reassured that steps are being taken to ensure the system is fit for purpose. For Checkpoint, Ben Strang.
It is 17 minutes after 6. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. There's concern with all the focus on COVID-19. People who are seriously ill with other conditions are leaving it too long before seeking medical help. General practitioners are doing most of their consultations online or over the phone to limit contact. Many made the move before we officially went into lockdown. ProCare represents more than 137 practices across Auckland with more than 800,000 enrolled patients. Its clinical director, Dr. Alan Moffat, says people are putting off consulting a doctor.
Well, that's a huge concern because we know from the number of people that are usually admitted to hospital, now fair enough, people are staying at home, they're isolating themselves, are less likely to get colds and bugs because of that, and not out there sort of mixing with germs, but equally, we're not seeing people presenting with the types of illnesses like heart attacks and so forth that we would be expecting. And ED in the hospitals have been very, very quiet, and so it tends to suggest that people are staying at home that are quite unwell, and when they do front up to ED, they've really been quite sick. They've left it too late. So we want to get the message out to say to people, general practice is open for business. Yes, it might be that you talk to somebody on the phone first and the GP will offer a telephone or a video-based consultation, but if you need to be seen, you can be seen, so please call your GP.
So, some ailments will require an element of physical exam. So how are you working that?
there's a number of different ways. If it's video, obviously you can get to observe somebody. You can still check their respiration rate, a number of things that you can do. Some people have equipment at home that we can use, people who have blood pressure monitors and so forth, so you can get pulse rates and things that way. But if people feel they need more information, actually 90% of what we do is really on history. A good history can really mostly sort out whether somebody is sick enough that they do need to come in and be seen, or whether it's safe to continue at home for a bit longer. But it is important for people to realise that if they're phoned up and being told, no, you don't need to come in, and they do get worse, they should ring back. Don't feel that, oh no, they're just going to tell me to stay at home. They must ring back and report about how those symptoms are going.
So to make an appointment, do you ring up as normal?
Yeah, so that's exactly right. We don't want people fronting up to the front door, because obviously we want to screen patients and make sure that they're not at risk of carrying the virus, or indeed, those people that are very ill, we don't want them out and about at risk of getting the virus either. So ring and talk it through with, there'll normally be a nurse or a receptionist that answers the call, and then you can be put through to the GP as you would for a normal sort of consult. And they'll make a call on whether you need to come into the clinic or whether actually they can manage your condition safely over the phone.
So for those, virtual consultations, do you still pay the normal fees?
Mostly, yes. Most practices are charging the normal fee because it is actually taking just as much. In fact, in some ways it takes a little bit more time to get that history, and it's really important that it's done safely. So there's a degree of risk from the GP's point of view.
And that's Dr. Alan Moffat. From a reverend hosting a dance rave to more than 100 farming mums donning their wedding gowns and toasting each other online, Kiwis are sharing some of the creative ways they've managed to cope through the lockdown. For many of us, the lockdown started with a bit of anxiety, so today we've compiled some of the things Kiwis did to keep themselves and others smiling. Here's Indira Stewart.
Day 2 of lockdown, and many of us were feeling nervous. Until this happened.
So what better thing to do when we need to cheer ourselves up than to dance? So I encourage you, get up out of your seat, whatever you're doing, grab the children, let's have a dance together, shall we?
If you're listening on the radio, that's Reverend Frank Ritchie. He's dressed in his formal religious attire, clerical collar and all, raving to techno music in his home office. Here's how that video came about.
I was listening to a radio station that plays some music and I was dancing in my office. And I thought, you know what? People watching a guy in a clerical collar dance around his office is probably going to put a smile on people's faces, probably what they need right now. So I just thought I'd throw shame out the window, record myself doing it and put it online.
That video now has thousands of views and has been posted on several other platforms. Many others have jumped in and responded with their own dancing videos, including other church ministers on lockdown overseas.
I've had a couple of minister colleagues in the United States now, because I put it out as a vicar dance-off once I saw that it was getting a bit of traction. So I've had a couple of friends in the States do it, and they look terrible. I've had a good laugh at them.
Reverend Frank Ritchie isn't the only one having a laugh. If you're missing the gym, how about a COVID-19 spin class or pump class run by former Mr. Australia and Mr. New Zealand champion bodybuilder Mark Rainbow? If you're listening on the radio, here's Mark, dressed in his fiancée Jo Stewart's black leotard.
Welcome to COVID-19 spin class! Woo! Who's ready to ride? Come on, girls, let's get on!
I've done a couple of videos. I did a COVID-19 pump class and I did a COVID-19 spin class. Joe's the producer, director, boom operator, editor. I'm just the actor. We decided we'd do something just a little bit different to try and keep people's spirits up and have a bit of a giggle within the fitness industry.
Jo Stewart, who's also won champion bodybuilder titles in multiple countries, including the world's Arnold Classic title, says she was glad to see others getting a laugh out of their videos while on lockdown.
So today when he did his spin class, and then I decided to grab
a long bodysuit that I had out of the dresser. Got him to try it on, and it was all on.
It took us, you should have seen us trying to get into it. It took us a while to squeeze into that.
Oh, it actually took longer to get out of it.
COVID-19 podcast. Oh, good. Are you ready, girls?
And if exercise isn't your thing during lockdown, maybe putting on your wedding dress and having a glass of wine will get you smiling. More than 100 farming mums around rural New Zealand decided to put on their wedding dresses on Wednesday and shared their photos online, toasting each other for surviving week 1 on lockdown. Jamie McKenzie from Aotearoa suggested the idea on a Facebook post as a light-hearted way to get through the stress of being on lockdown.
It was more just, well, we're all at home, we've really got no excuse at the moment, and we've got plenty of time on our hands, why not?
The post received a huge response with almost 150 comments. One woman said she would drive her tractor in a ball gown. Jamie says it was a great way for many of the farming mums in rural communities to support each other.
We need to try and fill our days with positivity and just trying to get that point across, but at the same time saying, hey, come on girls, let's just do something fun. I'm not a big drinker, but like, hey, put a fancy dress on and sit there and have a glass of wine and we'll all have a laugh together and then just try and carry on and keep our chins up.
Rather than putting on a wedding dress, others had different ideas to keep themselves smiling. Like this Gisborne woman who came up with her own answer to the lack of personal protective equipment. Izzy Terona did her grocery shopping in an inflated pink unicorn outfit, which she says gives her full protection from COVID-19.
It covers from head to toe. It comes with gloves, but it has to stay inflated the whole time that I'm using it. And then apart from that, I could probably work at a nuclear power plant. For the suit to stay inflated, it has 2 fans on either side. But as long as there's a filter on them or some sort of filter like a tissue or that you would wear in a mask, then, yeah, it's pretty much a hazmat suit.
Her photos have gone viral and have even been reported on by other media around the world. She calls it Māori ingenuity, and it's brought laughter to many.
In a time where we all have to stay home, the response has been amazingly positive. But the best thing for me has been the look on children's faces. Actually, the look on adults' faces too is just pure joy.
And as we go through week 2 of lockdown, she's got one message for New Zealand.
Spread joy, not germs, and follow me on TikTok. Whoop, whoop.
Wash your hands.
For Checkpoint, Indira Stewart.
And if you're listening to that one on radio, go back and look online. The pictures are amazing. 4 weeks at home in isolation does mean we have more time on our hands than ever before. So what better chance to dust off the dumbbells in the garage and exercise? But how much is too much and where does one even start? Louise Tanuth reports.
Each day of lockdown, the parks and pavements have been full of runners and walkers. Everybody is exercising, now more than ever. So could we be overdoing it? CEO of Exercise New Zealand, Richard Beddy, says rest is still important.
So if someone is exercising in an intense way every single day of the week, 7 days a week, normally that's going to be a sign that they're not giving enough rest. So that's probably one of the easy tells would be how many times a week are you exercising? And that doesn't mean moving your body. Moving your body can be every day.
However, Beddy says the break could also mean healthy routine is damaged.
So we are one of the least active countries in the globe. We're the least active Western nation in the world. And that's a problem. The break will mean people lose their habit.
It's all about listening to your body before injuries occur. Head of fitness at Les Mills, Ish Shane, says injuries could show something other than overdoing it.
Is it too much exercise or are you doing it incorrectly? Have you got the wrong footwear on? So sometimes at home we might not wear the same gear that we wear at the gym. So you might be trying to do a class in bare feet rather than actually wearing a really good sports shoe.
For those wondering where to start, Betty says duration should not be the focus.
Anyone that's starting new should look at the type of activities they do more so than the duration, at least to start with. So it's always about starting lower intensity and starting with a lower quantity as well. So that would be things like, if you're not physically active at all, then going for a walk is a great one.
Households with kids often use exercise as an opportunity to complete together. As Shane says, kids can join in on most workouts, but the line needs to be drawn somewhere.
Don't do heavy weight training. If it's just aerobic type activity, so not involving equipment, just making your heart pump because you're moving around and you're working your cardiovascular system through running or exercise or more aerobics style, kids are going to be fine with that.
Online pressure is at its peak, urging us to exercise and make use of our time. There is no doubt about the importance to move our body, but Shane says comparison is dangerous.
Really be careful who you're listening to for your fitness advice. You're exactly right. It seems that everyone with a six-pack and an Instagram account seems to be a fitness professional at the moment. But there is a difference between a fitness professional and an Instagram influencer just showing off online.
Mō te hotaka o te ahiahi nei, ko Louise Tenuth aho.
And that's all we've got time for this evening. Just a reminder, on Sunday night, daylight savings ends, so don't forget to turn your clock back an hour. We will be back on Monday. Thank you all for tuning in, especially Fergal. Have a great weekend.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. The first charter flight to repatriate stranded German tourists has taken off from Auckland Airport as domestic travel restrictions are relaxed for foreign nationals. Two of the country's biggest bus operators are being accused of using the COVID-19 restrictions to get drivers to use up their annual leave. Extensive work is taking place to repurpose hospital buildings and train staff to prepare for coronavirus patients. And police investigating the discovery of human remains near Tongariro are appealing for information on Chinese man Bao Changwang. Those are the headlines. Our next news will be at 7.
Hey, I'm Nano Girl. Join me and my nanobot Claire for another great science adventure.
My question is, how do planes fly?
Let's find out. Did you know that the first ever planes that were made, they actually tried flapping wings like birds? Guess how well that went?
Good. Not really good.
Pretty bad. Pretty bad.